I told y'all, I'm not letting up on these boys this year. We got our foot on their necks, heavy on the gas, gotta keep that mamba energy. Now, the Grand Servants, the epitome of the highest level in the Fate Stay Night franchise. So who are these servants exactly? You know, we've already talked a little bit about how the world has its own security system, that being the counterforce. One side of the counterforce was meant to protect humanity, which is Tsiah. That's when you see things like the counter guardians, and then the other side was meant to protect the world, which is Gaia. And from Gaia is where we get our Grand Servants. If a Grand pops up, this means that the world is on the brink of shambles. Usually there may be a beast class roaming around, or something that's on that level that could lead us to those dire states. Again, creatures that are from the beast class are capable of devastating the entire planet. Just wanted to throw that out there. Now, in the FGO timeline specifically, with people like Goetia and the alien god breaking up the foundations of humanity, the counterforce doesn't operate properly like it's supposed to. So sometimes we might really need some help, won't get it, and then we just gotta figure it out ourselves. And on that note, we're gonna dive straight into the most recent Grand Servant, and that is Grand Lancer Romulus. Now, as you know, in Lost Belt 5, we had to deal with the supreme deity Zeus. And not just Zeus, but all of the things that he had built up to the time, the machine gods, as well as his machine god form on top of that. The problem is, we didn't get a Grand Servant, so we had to bring one out through irregular methods. We were able to do this by using the unlimited mana at Mount Olympus, because it is Mount Olympus. It houses the gods. They have divine ley lines that are stronger than the ones that you will see naturally, and the magical energy is so dense that it just keeps coming. We used their ley lines, summoned the god of war Ares, and then used him and Caligula as a catalyst to bring out Grand Lancer Romulus. Now, normally, a Grand Servant isn't of divine descent. All of the Grands that you see are not Grand Servants because they're gods. They are Grand Servants because they were the best at what they did of their time. In this case, as you know, Romulus's father is said to be Ares. The reason that we were able to pull off bringing a god into the Grand class is because Romulus, being the first emperor of Rome, has a strong tie with humanity. He's comprised of two entities, that being Romulus and one of the supreme gods of Rome. His power scales up to the thunderbolts of Zeus, which again can blow up planets. He helped us beat Lost Belt Zeus, and he also helped us defeat Chaos, which is the primordial concept that existed before the universe was even created. What's more is that this same concept is the source of everything in Lost Belt 5. I think it's safe to say that Romulus is goated. This man could sneeze and wipe away your whole existence. That's how he's coming. Next in line that we gotta get into is my boy King Hassan. As I've already mentioned in his lore, he is the one that brought the term assassin into existence in the first place, and the one that made it popular. Therefore, there is no greater assassin to hold the seat other than the first Hassan. We first run into him in the Camelot Singularity, where he's helping us out a ton by dog walking people like Gawain, saving Cursed Arm Hassan, and then completely decapitating Ozymandias before he even realized what was going on. Ozzy being one of the best servants in Fate, to the point where King Arthur and Arash had to take him on at the same time, and they still were having trouble. Yeah, Hassan decapitated that guy, and then he just disappeared like nothing happened. What can I say? Dude's a menace. Then he can also drop an entire sandstorm out of nowhere just cuz. I mean, who's gonna stop him? One of the other interesting things about Hassan is that he plays the role of Ziusudra in Babylonia. Ziusudra is the Sumerian counterpart to Utnapishtim from the Epic of Gilgamesh and Noah from the Old Testament, that being the person that was appointed by God to survive the Great Flood and lead into the New World. In that chapter specifically, he's feeding us advice on numerous occasions, always knowing the right thing to do. And then at the end, he reveals himself to be King Hassan, as well as fighting against the beast Tiamat. Tiamat was said to be nearly invulnerable, but since Hassan is recognized as such a high assassin, he was rewarded with Azrael, which gives him elements of the angel of death. He was able to inject the concept of death into her and cut off one of her wings. However, when he did this introduced something else to us. When the Grand Servants utilize some of their greatest abilities, they end up relinquishing their role as the Grand. In Hassan's case, Nasu tells us that he is so great as an assassin that even after he gave up his Grand spot, nobody can take his place. Plus, he kept his boost. There's not a person that can match his caliber as an assassin. He's just that good. Moving right along, we have the former Grand Archer, Super Orion. He is stated to be the greatest hunter in all of Greece, and because of this, he was summoned in the Grand class. He was the significant other of the goddess Artemis in his lore, and we've seen him perform miraculous feats like taking down the machine god version of Artemis in the story. He was able to accomplish this with the longbow Aegis, a divine construct so powerful that it would cause a normal archer to self-destruct just from wielding it, and he handled it with finesse. Another thing that you have to know is that this bow was created from the divine armor of Achilles. Then he used a servant as one of the arrows on top of that. Using this along with some enhancement, he was able to blow the machine god Artemis into pieces in just 2 shots. He shot a god out of space from Earth. To put this into perspective, the original Artemis was the goddess of the hunt, she was the goddess of the moon, and she was the goddess of archery. And this machine god was a parallel to that. And as I've said in the Canis video, it is also capable of blowing up entire planets. And he shattered it into nothing. Now, in Orion's case, the bow still caused him to self-destruct over time, but he's the only one that we've seen that's capable of handling it, even if it was just for that moment. This is also his great feat that caused him to give up his grand title. Nevertheless, he's a force to be reckoned with. Then we have the man himself, former Grand Caster Solomon. You know, this is where it all started. Even through the acts of his demon counterpart, we've seen that he's able to manage 7 billion people worth of magical energy that was obtained by destroying nearly every human on the planet, that being part of Goetia's plan. He has an unrivaled level of clairvoyance, being able to see into the past and the future. He has the power to manifest a pocket dimension known as the Temple of Time, which as far as we know is boundless. And of course you have the infamous Ars Nova phantasm that he used to defeat Goetia that can actually match 3 millenniums worth of energy in just one blow. Unfortunately, this is the deed where he let go his title, but it went a little bit further than that. He was completely erased from the throne of heroes, and he can never be summoned again. However, when we went over to the Lost Belts, we did come in contact with his reincarnated body. This is heavily speculated to be Goetia after his death in the Beast class, because if it was Solomon, they would kind of go back on their word of him not being able to be around anymore. So we're still waiting on the reveal on that. Switching up gears, we go off into FGO Arcade, where we get our first reveal of the Grand Rider, and that is Noah from the Old Testament. Now this is pretty ironic because we've already had Hassan, who pretty much plays the same role as Ziusudra, but in a different culture. But since Hassan eventually gave up his role, it was kind of like them hinting at what's to come. Noah, of course, being the one that led the ark before the Great Flood and was one of the only few people to survive. Still learning new things about him, but as of right now, we know that he comes manifested in the body of one of our leading supports, and that is the servant Captain Nemo. The reason being is that it's stated that he's already had a battle with the beast, the Whore of Babylon, and this is one of the only ways that he was able to survive. And lastly, at least of the servants that we know about, is the grand servant that belongs to the cryptor, David. Apparently, David is so intelligent that he was able to summon a grand servant of his own merits, also circumventing the original system of the counterforce. As of right now, we've still yet to get a reveal on who this servant is. I've seen a lot of people say Cain. I think that's a good one. Personally, I feel like Genghis Khan would be a good fit. You know, he was the leader of the Mongols, and he's single-handedly responsible for some of the greatest atrocities on this planet, taking down a bare minimum of 40 million people. So that definitely would be a perfect fit. And if you kept up to date with the lore of the extra timeline, we've already had a servant of that level of tragedy for years, and that is Altera. The core of Altera's character is actually Attila the Hun, so it wouldn't be a situation where he would be too controversial because we already have her, and it's pretty much the same thing. Another person I would have to throw out there is, I think Esau would be a good one. You know, Esau in the Testament, he's the brother of the shepherd Jacob. He's the person that went off the rails and actually killed Nimrod to steal the garments of Elohim, which are the original hides of Adam and Eve. The reason being is that these hides give you superiority over all beasts on the planet, which in turn would make you the greatest hunter. And he took them for that very reason. And these hides were actually handed down by Noah. And we already have Noah, so I feel like that will fall right in line. Plus, you have the connection between Nebuchadnezzar and the Edomites, and we just got Nebuchadnezzar, at least in FGO Arcade. The Edomites being a nation birthed by Esau that went against God altogether. My only issue with this is, one, the last Lost Belts location, which is South America. Hard to really tell their agenda with that. And then the other thing is that we've already gotten some insight on the way that this Grand Servant operates. You know, he showed up in the Indian Lost Belt, and just from the few lines that he's given us in regards to Asclepius and the way that he handles the dead, you can tell that he's a man of some type of principle at the very least, and that's not Esau at all. So still on the fence about that. And then we have the Grand Saber. It's only right that you save the best for last. You know, originally Saber was supposed to be the strongest class, so it's only natural that they're the ones that come at the end. A lot of speculations on who this could be. The most common ones are Musashi Miyamoto, the real Musashi. He is without a doubt the best swordsman on record, and with the female Musashi having her data erased from the catalogs, I think there wouldn't be a better time for us to get the real Musashi, since from what we can see, there's no way that she can come back right now. The other one, of course, is King Arthur Arturia. Personally, I think this should really be Arthur. I'm a big fan of Arturia, but I feel like she's had her time to shine, and Arthur really hasn't. You know, he was in prototype fragments, and that's about it as far as any main stories go. And Nasu didn't even write that story. He just okayed it. It would be interesting to get his version of Arthur and put his own spin on it. Again, going back to the lore of the extra timeline and how there was this person that wielded the Excalibur 14,000 years ago to take on the alien White Titan, and we are also dealing with the alien god. It just aligns with the narrative that's going on right now. Another thing that we have to take into account is a Grand Servant Saint Graph, which is basically a spirit board that tells the person who they are and how strong they're supposed to be. In the case of the Grand Servants, while they're still holding their position, all of their base parameters are one rank higher than they would usually be. They are all types of broken. You even had Hans back in the London Singularity mention that a regular servant is just a cheap and convenient alternative. Honorable mentions have to go out to the wizard Merlin. He is a Grandcaster candidate. You know, Merlin is one of the first people that you think of when you think of magic and coming up with all sorts of things that shouldn't be possible. He is Arthur's court magician, and he is actually the person that's next in line to be the Grandcaster if he's ever appointed to that role. As of right now, you know, he's still stuck in Avalon. Merlin is so broken that the Merlin that we come in contact with is just an avatar of himself with a portion of his strength. So the Merlin that's stuck in Avalon is really stronger than that. He has some of the highest level of clairvoyance, being able to see everything in the present even if he's not there. He is an expert swordsman, being the one that taught Arthur how to fight, and he's been shown being summoned with Excalibur itself. He is part incubus, meaning that he can invade a person's conscience, including their dreams. He was able to do this with the beast Tiamat. He can recreate the Garden of Avalon, providing him and his allies with the territorial boost, and he can teleport pretty much anywhere on the planet that he wants, just to name a few. And then there's Tygon, who is a fairly new servant, hasn't even made it over to NA yet, and he's also made claims that he could have been the Grand Caster if he was summoned in that class. To add on to this flex, he's actually considered the role of Grand Rider as well, so we still got to get some updates on him, but as of right now, that is what we have. Let me know who you guys think should be in the Grand class, and also let me know who you think are the missing Grand servants. It's been a long time coming, no doubt.